Hi, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Awareness Podcast. Today, I am going to be talking to Louise Kay. Welcome, Louise. It's lovely to have you here.
Thank you.
And the topic of my editions of the podcast is integrating spiritual awakening in everyday life. And this is a topic that Louise is very passionate about. In her own life, Louise was born in Lancashire in the UK, not that far from where I am. And she worked as an English teacher until she began to explore spirituality, which led her to India, where she had a profound spiritual awakening. Today, Louise works as a spiritual teacher. She holds groups online and around the world. And her passion is to support people to live in presence and unconditional love and to express their creative gifts in the world. So it's lovely to be here with you, Louise. I always enjoy our conversations.
Likewise, very happy to be here with you, Susan.
And you're coming to us today from Turkey. I was just saying before we started recording that every time I speak to Louise, she's in a different part of the world. So on your website, Louise, you talk about embodied awareness, practicing embodied awareness. And, you know, a lot of our listeners have come from a background of studying A Course in Miracles and, you know, are still passionate about A Course in Miracles. And one of the teachings of A Course in Miracles is, I am not my body. And so could you talk a bit about what do you mean by embodied awareness and what is the role of the body? Does the body have a role in spiritual awakening?
Yeah, when we first start to inquire deeper into the question, who or what am I? Then the first discovery usually is that I'm actually not my thoughts. They're appearing in me awareness, and I'm not my body. I'm something beyond that. I'm pure awareness and pure consciousness. And that inquiry is necessary to enable people to disidentify from the conceptual self and from the belief that I am this temporary limited form, I am this body. So once that disidentification has happened and there's a realization that I'm beyond the body, I'm beyond the mind, I'm an eternal being, it initially seems like there's two. There's me, consciousness or awareness, and there's this body, this temporary form. And that can seem like there's a sense of a separation because the body's separate from me, it's not me. The mind's separate from me, it's not me.
Which doesn't seem to fit with non-duality, does it?
It doesn't.
That there's this sense of two. And often you hear people express it as the little s self and the capital S self, as though there are two selves.
Yes. So then when we inquire even deeper, there's the realization that actually there is no separation between these two. There is no distance between the experience of the mind or the body and me awareness in which this experience is appearing. So it's seamless, it's all one, it's oneness. But the deeper understanding now is that the thoughts that are appearing in the experience of the body that's appearing are temporary expressions that are changing, and the deeper essence of who I am is unchanging, it's lasting. And so there's not a rejection of the body or the mind that I don't want that, that's not spiritual. The spiritual level is beyond it. There is a sense of inclusion and acceptance that all is me, and not just these experiences appearing that appear to be personal, which they're not. Nothing's personal. The whole of existence is me. There's only this one consciousness as the formless and as the forms. So when we open to including the experience of the body, what happens is that consciousness begins to penetrate deeply into every cell of our being. It's like a kind of a fluid light that just wants to pour into every nook and cranny, every crevice that it can access, to bring this consciousness deep into our expression on the level of form. And anywhere where there's darkness, that light is drawn into it to allow the darkness to be pulled out into the light and to transmute into the light. You become part of this light. So we bring consciousness to the parts that remain unconscious. And these unconscious parts, sorry, I'll pause in a minute. These unconscious parts are often held in the physical and energetic body as unprocessed emotions from our past.
Yeah. A question just came in my head as you were speaking. That process of the light touching the darkness, let's talk about that, both in terms of how that manifests in an individual life and how that manifests on a global scale, because often that can look as though something is going wrong and can be rejected as I'm on the spiritual path and all of a sudden things are coming up in my life that seem painful and difficult, and so I must be doing something wrong. So speak to that, because I think, am I right in saying that process of the light contacting the darkness, things have to come up into the light to be seen and released, and it's so easy to think I'm not progressing in my spiritual path. I seem to go backwards.
Yes, absolutely. This is a very common experience, and it comes from the misconception that spiritual awakening is a path of more and more peacefulness and more bliss. And once I open to my true self, I will never experience any disturbing thoughts. I'll never experience any uncomfortable emotions. And that's not the case at all, actually. So it's more like a path of growth, a path of expansion, a path of deepening. And it's true that we do experience more peace and more joy and more bliss, but that's not the full story. It's more that there's not suffering anymore because of the experiences, but what we call negative experiences continue to arise, and they're necessary because the challenges are what catapult us into the growth. It's like if you have a bow and arrow and you have to pull the bow back, and it's creating a kind of a pressure, a tension, and then you can feel it getting stronger and stronger as you pull it back. When you let go, the reason it has so much force to catapult forward is because of that pressure. And that pressure is like the darkness and the challenges. So in a way, the bigger challenge you have, the more potential you have for that catapulting stronger towards the light. So when we're meditating, it's very common that we meet uncomfortable emotions, or what's often referred to as mind attacks. So there's an expectation that the mind will get quieter as we meditate more, but often what is the case actually is that the mind starts to get louder. And the reason why it starts to get louder is because it starts to feel threatened by this higher consciousness, and it starts to fight for its survival. It's a bit like a living entity in a way, and it wants to hold on for dear life. It wants to stay alive. It doesn't want to dissolve into the absolute. So like all of us have inside of us a fight for survival, so does the mind. So it starts shouting louder to try to, in a way, sabotage the surrender process. But once we understand and we can see what's happening, then we don't relate anymore to the mind as something that's evil or bad. It's just a recognition, okay, this is a part of the process now. The mind's feeling threatened. Well, that's okay, that's a good thing, because it means that I'm opening to higher consciousness. So then we remain present and observe the mind shouting, protesting, resisting, and allow it to go through that process. And as it goes through that process, the mind kind of comes around to this, the mind becomes more conscious itself, and it starts to understand the perspective of a higher consciousness. And then it gets on board and it stops resisting at some point, and then it quietens, it relaxes. On the level of the body and the emotions, what happens is anything that's unprocessed, any contraction held in the body, rises up to be seen and to be felt and to be held in unconditional love, which is the nature of higher consciousness. So it's like these parts are not bad. They want to come into the light, and they're saying, please see me. I feel hurt. I feel angry. I feel abandoned. I feel sad. I feel lost. Let me be felt. Let me be here too. And if we don't understand what's happening, there can be a tendency to resist or push away these parts and contract around the contraction. But when we know there's a good thing, that deep healing's taking place on the level of our human expression, on the level of our form, then we welcome it and we say, yeah, come, you can be here too. And our attitude shifts then from an attitude of, I need to get rid of this, to a gentle curiosity. What's this experience in the body? Oh, there's this part that feels like a baby, or it feels very tender, it feels vulnerable. Let me open to that, let me surrender to that. And as we open to it gives space, and it allows these parts to integrate and to release. And then they stop acting out unconsciously in our human expression. So we actually begin to change our expression, and we begin to live more in alignment with our true self, with with higher consciousness.
Yeah, I just love what you said there, for two reasons. One, this idea that all of these feelings we've refused to feel are, the way I think of it is they're like abandoned children that we didn't have time for, or we pushed them down, especially perhaps after we started a spiritual path where we thought that there were only this range of emotions that we were allowed to feel. So anger or fear or any of those emotions just got pushed to the side. So I love what you said there about, welcoming them and allowing them to be there. And often I've thought for myself of it almost like a mothering of those lost children emotions,
Yeah. A lot of people have an idea about what it means to be a spiritual person, and that means that I only experience this range of emotions. I only behave this way. So then the ego begins to form around the idea of me as a spiritual person. And it's another egoic expression, actually. So it's important to be vigilant and mindful about that, because actually, from a higher perspective, there is no good or bad emotions. It's all just energy. It's all totally neutral. And it only becomes a bad emotion if we're resisting it, because that's what causes the pain when there's some energy there that wants to be or needs to be felt, and we're saying no. That no creates the suffering and the pain. So when we bring a yes to all the emotions and we don't label them anymore in this dualistic way of good, bad, right, wrong, spiritual, not spiritual, positive, negative, but we transcend that, and there's just what is, which is neutral. That's unconditional love, because that allows everything. And that's the greatest healing medicine for those emotions. And you're right, many times these energies are like little children, because the reason why they're held in the body is because when we were small and we didn't experience having our emotions and feelings validated, or we felt rejected by our parents or our teachers, we felt we're not good enough, because nobody taught us, most of us, how to feel and process emotions in a healthy way. We were told, don't be a baby, stop crying, stop causing a fuss. We were conditioned that it's not okay to express this emotion. So our system had to find a survival, a coping mechanism. How am I going to continue in this world in a way that I'm not rejected, and at the same time deal with these emotions? So the way it did that was to contract, tighten up inside. Often we feel it in the abdomen, like a clench, like we're being punched in the stomach. And there's a tightness there. And that energy that contracted then becomes frozen in time. And it becomes frozen at the age that we experienced that pain. So if we were a 2-month-old baby lying alone in our cot in the dark at night, and we started crying, we woke up, started crying, mom and dad are downstairs watching TV, they can't hear us, and we feel scared. I'm all alone, I'm terrified, nobody's here. The baby can't have conceptual thought, but it can have a primal experience that maybe I've been abandoned, nobody's here for me, and I feel a kind of a terror. That contraction happens, and that terrified baby remains frozen in time at the age of 2 months. And it's like all the rest of our energy is just functioning around it. And we've got all these frozen parts, 2 years old, 6 years old, teenage parts. And those parts don't develop with the rest of us. So when we begin to consciously feel them and include them in the present moment, when we become aware that it's there, then just by being with the frozen parts and feeling it, it starts to thaw out, and it gives space for that emotion. And then as we feel it, it integrates, releases, and that part catches up developmentally with the rest of us. So when we get triggered, for example, we stop acting like a 2-year-old, because it's when we're triggered that 2-year-old is feeling the same pain we felt when we were actually 2 years old.
Yeah. You can see that play out. Your husband says something, and it's the 2-year-old that a fear of abandonment comes back up, and it's that relates. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then we're relating from the perspective of that trauma.
Yeah.
And if we're not conscious of it in the moment, if we're aware in the moment that, this part has been triggered, and what I'm feeling right now is actually not directly related to this interaction. It's something from some unprocessed emotion from the past. Then rather than feel bad about it, there can be a gratitude and a positive feeling towards it. Like, this is great, because right now I have an opportunity to meet some unprocessed emotion. And this is an opportunity for growth.
Yeah.
So those challenging moments become wonderful gifts, actually, and then we can go and sit and meditate and open to it and feel it and allow for that. What the body is asking for, we're in tune with it, and we're listening to it in the moment, and we're nurturing it rather than abandoning it in the same way that we felt abandoned when we were a child. So we then re-traumatizing ourselves.
Yes, by doing the same thing again. Yeah. And there seems to be such a deep compassion arises for the ego, for all that conditioning that we've held. And just my own experience has been, instead of rejecting it, which I did for quite a long time, in the name of spirituality, I don't want to look at all that stuff because it doesn't matter anymore. And then coming to realize, no, it does. These are, as I said, the lost children coming up, to have a real love for the human body, mind, personality that went through all the things it went through, developed all the conditioning that it developed, and just to sort of almost fall in love with that egoic part, where my training in the past had been more to get rid of it.
I love this expression, innocent evil, because once you understand once you have a deeper understanding of what's taking place in humans, then there's a capacity to see that all of the evil that's acting out, all of the unconsciousness that's acting out, comes from an innocent place. Now, that might sound a bit strange, like, oh, what if somebody is hurting another person violently, physically? The reason for that hurt is because they're hurting inside, and hurt people hurt people. And so the evil that's acting out is a kind of a coping mechanism or survival mechanism to somehow be with that overwhelming pain, somehow try to survive, try to feel better. And of course, it's just not the wisdom or the level of consciousness there to do that in a masterful way. So it expresses unconsciously. And we all know this to some degree or another, because if we look at our personal lives, usually when we're upset, who do we project it onto? The people that we love the most. Yes. When we're feeling some pain or overwhelm, it kind of overflows onto those around us if we're not able to be present enough in the moment and recognize what's happening.
Yeah. I think that's so well summed up by what Jesus said on the cross: "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do."
Yeah.
And I think, looking out in the world today, even just as we're recording this, the war in Ukraine's going on. There's just been that school shooting in America. And that's the phrase that's going around in my mind constantly, is "Forgive them, Father, they know not what they do." And also from A Course in Miracles, that everything is either an expression of love or a call for love.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah. So, there's nothing else. Yeah.
So when we understand that on an individual level, let's call it a personal level, that what's been experienced in me is a call for love. It's these little children inside that are just screaming, "Mommy, Daddy, where are you?" And we have the capacity to be that parent for our inner experience and say, "Yes, I'm here. Everything's okay. You're okay just as you are." Then that compassion that starts to develop through this practice, and that unconditional love starts to overflow externally to other people and situations. So rather than judging and criticizing and rejecting our inner experience, we no longer judge, criticize, and reject other people and project onto them that you're not good enough, you shouldn't be like this, you're doing wrong. because there's a wisdom to see that everyone's doing the best that they're able to do with the level of consciousness that they're at. And what's left is only to feel compassion and love for them, which is actually the thing that can serve them the most, because just like that's the medicine we need inside, that's the medicine they need. So rather than attacking someone when they're being unpleasant, which is usually our knee-jerk reaction, we're more compassionate, and that compassion and openness gives space for healing, and we're not re-traumatizing other people in the same way that we might re-traumatize our own inner experience.
Yes. And we're not adding to the collective anger and aggression energy in the world.
Yeah, we're actually contributing towards unconditional love and higher consciousness in the world. And this is how it starts with each one of us. First meeting our own inner experience in this way with gentleness and unconditional love, and then allowing that to overflow outwardly to everyone and everything around us, starting with our family and then our small village, and then our town, our country, our continent, and our whole planet. And that's where we find world peace.
Yes, yes. And that is the integration of spiritual awakening, isn't it? It's not having some future goal, that one day maybe we've had a glimpse and then one day we're going to get that back, or we're going to be enlightened sometime in the future. It's this what's arising every day, when we turn on the news, how we respond to that, how we respond to our husbands, our children, all of that is the spiritual path, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. Often we're looking for some big, spectacular, special experience, like Jesus visits me, or angels speak to me, or teleportation, or something like that. But what true spirituality is this absolute simplicity of being in the moment. So it can be something as simple as taking a sip of water and being deeply present in that moment with that experience, and just feeling the glass, or feeling how the water feels in your mouth, and looking at a tree like you're looking at it, not as a mental concept that I know what that is, but I'm looking for the first time with wonder at this amazing color, shape, aliveness. And the world becomes a more magical place. It becomes a mysterious place. And we start to live in the unknown, because the only thing that's known actually is this moment. And even the next moment hasn't revealed itself yet. When it comes, it will be this moment. So it's an unfolding of now in a magical way, where we're only deeply present here with this now.
Yeah. So for people, in our community, people have expressed real grief, real confusion, not knowing how to be with events in the world, saying things like, are we just spiritually bypassing? You just said there, the world can be a magical place. And yet the world does not appear to be a magical place for very, very, very many of its inhabitants. So speak to us a little bit, Louise, about how we can be with the difficult things that are occurring in the world. We already touched on it a little bit, but expand on that, because I think often it can be, from what I'm hearing, and also what I feel myself sometimes, it can really, it can almost shake your faith, and faith is not the right word, but it gives us pause when we see, because we are having experiences of peace and joy, and there's almost guilt that this is my experience, and yet it's not the experience of so many other people, and also that I don't have what might be termed the normal response to world events. I don't know if you're catching, what I'm saying here, but speak to that.
I think so. I think so. Yeah. When we open to higher consciousness, our whole orientation shifts. In a way, everything becomes the reverse. So before, happiness and peace is dependent on external circumstances. So I need to feel a sense of safety and security by getting married and having a house and a secure job. And I need to feel a sense of worth by being successful in the world. There's nothing wrong with these things, but when there's not a deeper understanding, then there's an idea that these are the things that will bring me happiness and fulfillment. So we seek externally to get these things. And if I get a lot of money, then I'm happy. But if I lose all my money, then I'm sad. If my relationship's going well, then I'm happy. If the relationship ends, then I'm sad. So it's a constant up, down, high, low experience, and a constant effort to try to manipulate external circumstances so that I feel at peace inside of myself. Now, some people have to play this game for some time to reach the understanding that, wow, this is like banging my head on the wall, because ultimately I'm not able to control these external circumstances. It's all unpredictable and I never know what's going to happen. So it's just stressful. Now, when we surrender, that means giving up the attempt to control the manifest world and surrendering it to the higher intelligence, the divine, God, the universe, whatever you want to call it, and say, okay, it's in your hands, thy will be done. Mm-hmm. And that initially can trigger a sense of fear or powerlessness, because there's a feeling like if I don't try and give all this effort to control and manipulate reality, it's all going to fall to pieces, everything will collapse and everything will be terrible. And people have to surrender to that feeling of powerlessness, which is truly giving up control and surrendering everything, absolutely everything, to this higher intelligence in order to transcend that feeling of the conceptual I that wants to control, manipulate, and discover a deeper peace that there's actually no separation between me and this higher intelligence. That's me, actually. I am that. So the one that's trying to control and manipulate acts as a barrier to me knowing myself as that. So when we surrender, then the peace and the happiness that I know as my true nature it's always here. And it's not dependent on any external circumstance. So something terrible happens in the world and the peace is here. Now, people might hear this and say, oh, how selfish of you. How can you not be upset about this? How can you be so incompassionate? That's not a word, is it?
Discompassionate.
How can you be so discompassionate? These people are suffering. But the thing is that if somebody else is suffering and I suffer because I have an idea that being compassionate means suffering because they're suffering, then I'm actually adding to the suffering in the world. And it's totally illogical. But if I remain at peace, and that doesn't mean that I'm not compassionate, I actually have a greater capacity to meet that other person in their pain by being in a space of unconditional love and give an opportunity for healing and integration and opening to higher consciousness in them. It's much more beneficial for the world if I'm a beacon of love, of peace, of joy, because then I'm a light inviting the others to meet me here.
Yeah.
So the other thing I wanted to say is our mind has a very limited capacity to understand reality, and everything's perceived through this little, it's like looking through binoculars, and the mind can't see what lies beyond that perspective. But the higher intelligence is pure wisdom. It's the intelligence that can create universes. So it knows what it's doing. And when we let go of our mind's limited idea that this shouldn't be happening, this shouldn't be happening, often we can open to deeper insights and see how the suffering that happens in the world is actually necessary, because it's a catalyst for awakening to higher consciousness. And it's often when there's horrific things happening in the world that we learn and change the most quickly, because we see we don't want this to happen again. If you look after Second World War, what happened with Adolf Hitler, then that was a huge learning experience for us. And it actually catapulted us into a period of rapid growth and transformation from a wider perspective. So we can see how what seemed like the most horrific thing on another level can be the most beneficial thing. So yes. We transcend the mind's judgments and limited perspective, and there's a deeper trust in what is, and there's a sense of allowing what is. And this earth plane that we're on, it doesn't appear to be a place that we come to just to drink margaritas and lie in the sun and have a blast. It's clear that there's some kind of structure in place here that's like a kind of a school for us, and it's giving us opportunity to learn and grow. So when we approach it from that perspective, rather than why is life doing this to me and be a victim to it, I should just be having all these good things happen to me. And we understand that, oh yeah, actually this is what it's about. It's about learning, growing, integrating, healing, transforming. What can I learn from this experience? How can I grow from this experience? It's a whole different attitude, and the way that we relate with life on the level of experience totally shifts. And it also takes away the level of suffering, because when we see that it's all good for me, it's all supporting me, I'm happy about it. I'm not suffering it.
Yeah, I think what you did there was just sum up the whole spiritual path. As you were speaking, I was thinking, I think it was Einstein that said the only question you ever have to answer is whether we live in a benevolent universe. So that's kind of the first thing, isn't it? Is there a divine benevolent intelligence that knows what it's doing? That's almost, one of the first questions that we encounter on the spiritual path, isn't it? Can I trust this? And then the compassion and that comes from centeredness, that I, as you just expressed, that if I suffer with it, because that's the meaning of compassion, isn't it? Compassionare, I think it is from Latin, means to suffer with. But if we suffer with, we're not any use, because now you've just got two suffering people. And that is the answer to the guilt question, isn't it? Because that's what I've heard people express, that they feel some guilt about having this understanding and having that sense of, I'm not as affected by the events in the world as I used to be before I came, onto this path, and feeling some guilt about that. And the thing about in the Tao Te Ching, for example, that the Taoist master remains the still point at the center. That's the highest. I seem to be quoting people all over the place, but Ramana Maharshi said the highest service we can render the world is our own self-realization.
Yes.
So, yeah, I don't know. There's just something in what you're saying that's really touching me. That this is the path. Our life is the path.
Yeah. And it's not about getting to some future point when I've made it, I'm there. Yeah. Now we have heaven on earth. It's not going to come like that. Heaven on earth is recognizing that I am beyond all of these changing forms. It's recognizing my true nature. And that recognition can only happen in the present moment, right now. So heaven on earth is inside of me. It's not out there.
It's right here now. So what is for people who are listening, what is the most direct pointer you can give to their true nature, just in this moment, to have a recognition of the truth of who they are as they're listening to us right now?
Yeah, it actually wouldn't be any words, because any words is more food for the mind. It would be to recognize that which is not words, that which is not thoughts, that which is a deeper stillness that's here. And you have to be quiet to notice that. So this is an interview, so it would be a bit strange just to sit here for 1 hour in silence. But as the speaking is happening, I would invite people to notice between the words what's here, where there's no thinking, there's no doing, there's just pure consciousness aware. It's just me, awareness, aware. And it's more, rather than doing something, it's more a stopping of everything. And in that moment of stopping, that moment of stillness, it's here.
Yeah. It's isn't it strange that it's not a doing, it's a stopping, and it's not an adding, it's a subtracting.
Yes.
The path's not. I used to be a maths teacher, so like this addition and subtraction. I used to think that, I had to add things. I had to become a really good meditator. I had to add knowledge about spiritual paths. I had to add things, accumulate things. But actually what it's been about has been letting go of, allowing everything that I thought I was to be subtracted.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And it's not surprising really when you look at how we're conditioned, because our whole orientation in society is about adding on. How can I become more? How can I become better, become smarter, become more interesting, become funny? There's this whole movement on personal growth and self-development. We want to develop to get better, to achieve, for success, for worth. And I'm not saying it's all terrible. There's wonderful things in that. And it's great to improve ourselves on the level of form. But as you say, this is the opposite. Mm-hmm. It's like undressing and becoming naked. Like if I take off my personality, if I put down everything I believe in, if I let go of all the ideas I have about who I am, my name, my nationality, my religion, my spiritual beliefs, everything I like, everything I dislike, all my memories, everything, the whole past, the whole future, just letting go of everything, stripping it all down. Yeah, then what's here?
Yeah.
What remains?
Yeah. Somebody used the metaphor of Michelangelo's David, the block of marble, and he saw the sculpture of David inside the marble, and then had to chip off all the extraneous bits of marble. It feels like that, doesn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
And what's the beautiful sculpture, to use that metaphor, is always there. It's here. The true self is here. It's not. And even the words true self are becoming, they jar in my mind now for some reason. I used to trot that out regularly, but now true self, it just feels that, as we started off by saying, there's not a little s self and a big s self. It is one. There's just one.
Yeah. And any word or language is a limitation. It can't be put into words. And I really like what Eckhart Tolle talks about when he says it's like if you've got a signpost and it's giving you directions like London, Glasgow, Paris, and if you stand looking at the signpost, then you're not going to get to the place. You have to actually follow the signpost.
Yeah.
And it's the same with these pointings. Like if you're just looking at the labels and absorbing the words on a mental level, nothing's going to happen. Just you're going to be able to talk about it mentally. Yeah. There's not going to be a direct experience because you have to actually follow the pointing. Yeah. You have to actually stop and really inquire in your own experience.
Yeah, and I think we all get to that point, don't we, with spiritual teachings, that we've read the books, we've heard the teachers, we've done the workshops, and that there comes a point where you recognize that now I have to live it, and my life is showing me every day how to do that.
Yeah. Maybe not even I have to live it, now I want to live it.
Now I want to live it. Yeah. So in August, you're going to be teaching a couple of workshops for us in the Integrated Awakening series. And the overall title of those is Dedication to Awakening. So first of all, what do you mean by dedication to awakening?
Yeah, it's more what I don't mean by it, really, because a lot of people have this idea that what we're talking about with success and achievement, if I want to be successful or get something, then I have to work really hard and I have to push myself when I don't want to, and I have to have willpower and inner strength, and it's difficult and it's tough. And that's what we understand by dedication, really, that like it's a chore. I have to be dedicated to going to the gym every day. Gotta go to the gym again to get in shape. But I'm dedicated, I'm going to do it. And spirituality is not like that. It's the dedication to the spiritual path doesn't come from a mental idea about a conceptual me that wants to be a spiritual person. It's actually something that's born from the heart. And it's more longing in the heart that wants to feel closer to God, that wants to feel closer to the divine, living in alignment with higher consciousness every moment. And so the dedication actually is more like a love affair. I love her with truth. I'm in love with this. This is what makes sense to me. This is the thing that feels real in this world of chaos and insanity. This is what feels sane to me. And I love this. And my heart says I want to give my life to this. And that's dedication.
Why does it feel natural and sane?
Because something opens up in the system which allows for this recognition, and that there is a seeing that comes that this is futile, seeking my happiness externally. I can actually see it's just exhausting me. I'm getting burnt out just trying to do well, trying to strive for more success. It's exhausting. And something inside of us reaches a point where we start to question, there must be something more, there must be something deeper. And that ignites this quest for a deeper meaning, to search for a deeper meaning. And that quest often is ignited by suffering.
Mm.
So we see how the suffering serves our growth.
Yeah. Fierce grace is what I call it.
I love that.
I think too, there's a sense of recognition, though, isn't even with a little tiny glimpse. Because I used to think that I was a bit weird, because I had all this interest in spirituality that my friends kind of didn't have, that there was something, that I didn't really understand why I was so drawn to all of this stuff when, other people were just getting on with the usual stuff. And then I started to realize, no, this is the natural state. It's not weird. It's finding actually the way humans operate best. You talk in your on your website, the introduction to your website, about fulfilling your potential, creative expression. And I think we do that best when we're in touch with our true nature.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Otherwise, our expression is born from a mental idea about what I should do or what would be good for me. And it's actually a disconnect. We're not connected to the deeper intelligence that wants to flow through us and bring higher consciousness into the world in some kind of creative expression in form. So we have to first let go of the mental idea. And often that means surrendering to the absolute unknown. I have no idea what I enjoy, what my passion is, who I am. I know nothing. And it's in that nothingness that we discover everything.
Yeah. Yeah. There's such freedom, isn't there, in I don't know, but I'm open for the divine to flow through.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the two workshops that you're teaching, one's on the 15th of August at 3 p.m. Eastern. That's called Transcending the Conceptual Self. So speak a little bit about what people might discover in that class.
Yes, that class we will speak about what the conceptual self is, so that we can understand and recognize it. And it's that little me that is born inside our mind, the idea of who I am, and we try to build on it, improve it, enhance it. And we understand we look at the structures of how it's developed and how it acts out in our life, causing our suffering and unconsciousness, and to look deeper and see what is it that lies beyond that. What's here if that structure dissolves or falls away? And it's not a kind of a lecture to get information about it to retain mentally. There'll actually be pointings for direct experiential knowing of it.
Yes.
Ultimately, that's what's important.
Yes. And then the second one is the 29th of August, Living in Alignment with Truth.
Yes.
So I'm guessing, is that one going to be about allowing the divine expression to come through you? Is that?
Yes. So once that conceptual self has been transcended and there's a recognition of something deeper that I am, opening fully to that and allowing it to flow through as unabridged and express in the world, which often means facing limiting beliefs that we've taken on connected to self-worth, fears about how it will be I'll be received in the world. What actually is my true passion? These kind of explorations to plug ourselves back in, to connect to that excitement and joy for life and creativity that we all knew when we were children, but somehow we got disconnected from it. We got unplugged in our attempt to be someone so that we could fit in and feel we have a sense of worth.
Yeah, that's really good. So if you are listening to us and you're feeling some of the things that we've been talking about today, a sense of overwhelm with spiritual workshops, or not knowing how your spirituality fits into how you act every day in the world, then I really would encourage you to come and join us in August for Louise's classes, because as Louise has just said, the important thing is a direct experience. This is not about learning more information, Louise, is it? It's about people.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, people. I think it's going to be, if I was going to give it a maths name, it would definitely be a subtraction class.
I think I would have done much better in maths at school if you'd been my teacher, Susan.
Oh, thank you so much, Louise. Thanks for joining us today, and I'm really looking forward to spending time with you again in August. Thank you for being with me today.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.